This program on investing under regulation crowdfunding is not investment advice.
Rising with the crowd, power unbound, change makers lead where hope is found. Superpowers for good, shaping the fate. Investors and dreamers open the gate. Supercross stands loud, proud and true, building tomorrow for me and you.
Have you ever wondered, as you think about, meeting someone really unique, interesting, special, just a story that's so compelling, you can't let go of it? Well, that's the kind of guest I have on the show today. You do not want to miss this episode. Welcome to the Super Crowd Presents Superpowers for Good. I'm your host, Devin Thorpe, and our guest today is Kevin Shird. He's the author of A Life for a Life. He's a professor. He's also a returned citizen and has an amazing story that is the subject of a book and a soon to be released film. So stick around. You don't want to miss this. Kevin, welcome back. Welcome back to the show.
Hey, Devin, how you doing, man?
Great. It's so good to see you again. Well, you've been on the show a little bit. You've talked to us about your story when it was new. The book's been out for a while now. Tell us, how's the book performing?
Oh my God, it's unbelievable. The reception that we're getting for the book, A Life for a Life, Poor Choices and Unresolved Trauma is Killing America, the reception has been amazing. And this is my fourth book, Devin. So I'm kind of experienced with how to gauge the responses. And the responses here have been so emotional and personal that I know that as a writer, my job is done. Because what you want to do is you want to get people to relate. You want to get people to open up. And that's the reception that I'm getting so far. And so I'm just blessed, man, to be in this position, to have a book that the world can really feel, not just read it, but they really can feel it. And again, that's how you know your job is done as an author.
Well, it is a brilliant book. I've read it, and it's wonderful. It's such a compelling story of not only your experience in prison, but that of a friend.
Yeah.
And really, in a way, the story is that of how your paths diverged.
Mhm.
You each had the opportunity to return, having completed your your time,
Mhm.
and you've been maximally productive. You've been
Yes.
successful. You've built relationships with the prominent leadership in Baltimore and in the state. Your old friend Wes Moore is the governor.
Mhm.
You're a big deal. And yet
Thanks.
your friend got out of prison and fell into that pattern of recidivism and
Mhm.
ended up in more trouble than he
Yeah.
was in originally. It seems
Yeah.
to me, and I don't want to steal your thunder, but there's a mental health issue and a mental health, you know, treatment in prison kind of situation that I think you want to highlight with this book. Is that one of the key takeaways? Am I misunderstanding or am I understanding correctly?
No, you're absolutely right. So post incarceration syndrome, or PICS, PICS, is actually an issue that NIH is researching like right now, and it's associated with recidivism. You know, oftentimes in the past, we look at a guy that he's almost on his hamster wheel of just bad troubles, back to back to back to back, and he can't find his way. And sometimes we look at it and say, "Wow, he's just a bad guy or a bad person." is certainly prone to making poor choices. But in my research, what I discovered, Devin, is poor choices is actually tied to unresolved trauma. And so when trauma is unresolved, right, there's a propensity of continuing this hamster wheel of just poor choices after poor choices after poor choices. And in some cases, for some individuals, those poor choices get worse. And so that's actually what you just described. When I met the individual in prison, he only had about a year and some change. His total sentence was about 2 years. And after getting out and committing or committing a horrific crime, like a double murder, he's now serving life plus 35 years in prison. And so it's a tragedy all the way around, specifically for the victims of the crime, but also for this gentleman who will spend the rest of his life in prison. And so, how do we create opportunities where people who are suffering from mental health issues, acute and severe, but how do we create situations where they can get the support and the help that they need so that they can live a better life? Mental health and public health and public safety, there's a cross sector there. They actually merge. And when the mental health of our society is better, there's a less chance that that folks will impact the public safety of everyday citizens, man, just
Yeah.
trying to live their life.
It's such a scary thing to think about.
It
Uh,
is.
but one of the issues I think that some listeners will have is, they'll think, well, you're this individual we're talking about. He sort of got what he deserved after committing a heinous crime,
Right.
but that misses the point, right? He
Hmm.
he was suffering
Right.
a mental health crisis, at least in part. That was at least a factor in what was going
Yes.
on in his life.
Yes.
Better mental health care might have prevented two deaths,
It could
uh,
have saved
in
two lives.
addition to putting him on a path to becoming more like Kevin Shird, right?
Mhm.
Having a productive, engaged life, contributing to society instead of becoming a burden and suffering the rest of his life. What are some of the changes that you see that we could be making in and after prison to help those who have been or are incarcerated to better cope with their return to society?
That's a great question. Really great question. And one of the things that I really want to focus on is putting more licensed clinical social workers in prisons, behind the wall, where we can help guys before they get released, right? Because if we wait until they get out or we wait until they commit a crime, then we missed a great opportunity. But working with men and women inside prison, inside the wall, by putting licensed clinical social workers there to help them get to a better place so that when they return, it's helpful for us all. It's not and it's also not just about committing crimes, but it's also about being able to be productive in society. Look, when people do bad things which result in incarceration, we all pay. We pay to house them, we pay to feed them, we also pay for the trauma that's been inflicted on our communities. And now you got communities who have been traumatized and need support. There's a term in mental health called hurt people, right? Hurt people. And when people aren't well, when people have unresolved issues that they're dealing with themselves, um, they're not they struggle, and sometimes their struggles land in our laps. Um, Happy people don't commit violent crimes. That's just a reality. Like happy people just don't commit violent crimes.
Yeah.
And so what can we do to make that better?
Yeah. One of the things that I found remarkable in my limited study around this, and I'm not an expert, but I'm fascinated by uh, the system in Norway, where they rather famously now treat prisoners there as residents, as colleagues. The staff at their prisons treat the residents with respect. They genuinely become friends, hang out after the residents have done their time there and move on. They some of them are literally. It's a completely different mindset and a much lower recidivism. Why do you think that model reduces the people returning to prison when you would think that would be almost such a pleasant experience you wouldn't feel adequately punished? And in the US system, almost universally, time in prison is a horrible experience. For the best case scenario, it's often horrible.
Mhm.
Why does it work to have a softer system? Why? Do you have an opinion about that?
Yeah, absolutely. Even in a personal experience, 95% of all people who are in prisons in America will return to the streets at some point. 95%. That means 5% will never make it out. But 95% will become your neighbors, my neighbors, the guy working at the supermarket, um, the guy working in a Verizon store, the guy working at a restaurant. Um, at some point, we're going to interact with these folks, right? And so we're still stuck in this society of punishment. America is still a society of punishment, right? Um, we should be a society of accountability, and that's okay, right? And that's actually the right thing to do. But we still have an antiquated system of punishment, not realizing you put any person in a cell for any extended amount of time, there's a possibility that they could be traumatized. And once they're traumatized, um, without the proper counseling, without the proper support, um, it's a good chance they'll traumatize someone else. And that's what Damien did in the book. He was traumatized over and over and over again in different situations, even by parents. And then he ended up traumatizing someone else. Um, the system in Norway works because the impact on the prisoners is not as harsh as the impact here in America. I remember back in the 80s watching a segment on like 60 Minutes when I was a kid. And it was a federal prison in West Virginia that actually had a swimming pool. And when this segment aired on 60 Minutes, like why does this prison have a swimming pool? It was actually a low level federal prison for white collar criminals. But when this segment aired on 60 Minutes about why is there a swimming pool in a prison? You know, America was on an uproar, and it forced the prison to get rid of the swimming pool. It was never about the swimming pool. It was actually about having a less harsh environment so that when these men return back to society, that they don't return broken, and first and foremost, they can't fit back into society. Two, back to my point, hurt people.
Yeah. You just, I'm not the expert. You're the expert, but it just sounds like you've just hit the nail on the head, right?
Yeah.
Hurt people hurt people. So if we're hurting people in prison, they're not getting less likely to reoffend. They're getting more likely to reoffend.
Yeah.
It just feels so much like we're doing it wrong. Well, Kevin, we're going to take a quick break here, but folks, I'm here with Kevin Shird. He's the author of A Life for a Life. He is a professor. He's a big deal in Baltimore society now, but a returned citizen. And we're so grateful to have him on the show today. We're going to take a break. When we come back, we're going to talk to Kevin about his superpower and what's enabled him to return so successfully. So stick around. You don't want to miss this.
You don't need a pitch deck. You need a following. Because in this era, the crowd is the capital. Raise from your fans. Turn customers into shareholders. Launch your round on your terms. Dealmaker. Equity crowdfunding for the new era.
Digital Niche Agency is the top investor acquisition agency. DNA has helped founders raise over 9 figures via regulated investment crowdfunding with a 3-pronged strategy using digital advertising, content marketing, and strategic outreach. Book a call today.
Supercrowd 25, where innovation meets impact.
18 hours of live content, 5 platforms, 1 global audience.
Join the largest event for regulated investment crowdfunding. Live pitches, expert panels, real change.
August 21st and 22nd.
Scan the code or visit thesupercrowd25.com to register free today.
Welcome back, everyone. I am so excited. We've got with us today Kevin Shird. He's an author, professor, and a returned citizen. And I am so grateful that he's come back on the show because he's one of the most interesting people we've ever had on the show. And so it's just a real privilege. We're going to shift gears now to talk to him about a little more personal aspect of his life, talk to him about his superpower. So stick around. You don't want to miss this. Kevin, you are truly remarkable.
Thank you.
With our messed up system, so in need of deep reform, you've been through some difficult experiences in life, challenging situation that got you, invited to spend some time as the state's guest. And then you did that through difficult circumstances, and you've emerged. You've returned to society, been just hugely successful in building a successful life for yourself, making a difference for others, really contributing in so many ways as a professor, as a multi-time author, as a filmmaker. I mean, big deal. Okay, what is your superpower?
I think my big one, man, is really just being authentic with people about in storytelling and be able to connect. I had a literary agent tell me one time, if you haven't made a person laugh, cry, or smile in your book, then you haven't done a good job, right? But it extends beyond just writing, but it's also just being able to build real relationships with human relationships with people. And so I'm just great. I'm so grateful that I do have that gift to just be authentic and being able to create the human connection with people. Because we all have problems, and they might be different problems, but they're still problems, and they're still important to you. And that's the part that I don't think people always understand, is that it might be someone else's problem, but it's still important to that person. And so it should also be treated that way by everyone else. And so just having to be able to have a human connection now, I think that for me, that came with maturity. It also came with just understanding people, that we all have a story. Might be a different story from yours, but it nevertheless, it's still a story. When I write, I talk about the farmer in Kansas who wakes up at 4 in the morning to plow the corn. Um, it might be a different story from your story, but it's his story, you know?
Yeah. It's fascinating your superpower because as someone who is in the business of telling other people's stories, I need to channel a little bit my inner Kevin Shird every day. I wonder if you can think of a specific example of a time when you told a story,
Mhm.
perhaps someone else's, but not necessarily, and it had some sort of demonstrable impact or result that you could say, wow, I was so excited to see that happen because of the way I told that story. Can you think of an example?
Yeah, I've had like several over the years. Mind you, I've been a published author now for 11 years. And so I've had 11 years of contact with people over content that I've written. And I mean, I don't know where I would start. I think it was my first book where I wrote about my father's alcohol addiction in that first book. And I was actually embarrassed to write about it, a little bit ashamed to write about it, but I knew that there's power in healing in the art of writing. And so I published the book, I put it out, and man, I had prominent people here in Baltimore, in New York, and New Jersey, reaching out to me and saying, "Hey, man, I read your book. My father was an alcoholic too, or my mother was an alcoholic too." And a few times people called me in tears. And so that was my first experience really with something like that, really understanding the power of writing and the power to connect people through um, a common story.
That's so profound, and I appreciate you sharing that and being a little vulnerable. We have just a minute. Can you give us one tip for being a little more effective in storytelling, that creating that authenticity so we can, channel our inner Kevin Shird?
Remove the mask because you got a lot of people that wear the mask. We have like everybody's has issues, everybody's had problems, everybody's had failures in their life. Um, my suggestion would be just to remove the mask, become a bit more vulnerable, which will allow you to go a bit deeper, right? It'll allow you to go a little bit deeper and have a deeper connection with the people around you. And so that's something that I pride myself on, but I also pride myself on the fact that I know it's effective and it works. Remove the mask, go a little deeper, and connect with people.
That's brilliant. Now, Kevin, as we wrap up, tell us how people can get in touch with you. I know you're busy, you're a big deal, but if there's a protocol, share that, a tip, a strategy. And then, of course, tell people how they can get your book. I'll put the link back up here on the screen in just a moment, but s4g.biz/life is a short link that'll take you directly to the Simon and Schuster page where your book is linked so people can get it. But tell us more about the options for getting your book, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, so Amazon, Barnes and Nobles, of course, you mentioned Simon and Schuster, who is actually my distributor. So we're distributing books all over the world. If you're in London, if you're in Ireland, if you're in Italy, if you're in Brazil, Wherever you are around the world, you can get the book online. Amazon.com, Barnes and Nobles, Target, and more than likely any bookstore in your city here in America. But I also can be reached at kevin.shird@yahoo.com. Just send me an email. And you can also catch me on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. I'm all over the place. Google Kevin Shird, and you'll
Fantastic.
certainly find me.
Fantastic. Well, Kevin, thank you so much for being with us. We wish you continued success in getting your book and your message out there.
Thank you, man. I appreciate it. This was
All,
great.
all righty now, let's do some good.